On today's Locked On Nationals, we start a new segment, and that segment is What If Wednesday? And today's question being posed, what if the Washington Nationals spend on a big starting pitcher?
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, find us wherever you get your pods. Just search Locked On Nationals there. And as well as over on YouTube, search Locked On Nationals. Hit that subscriber button for your daily Nationals content here with the Locked On Podcast Network. And later on in today's show, we will be discussing the Nationals' new hires with multiple familiar faces. Number one, Gerardo Parra. We already know the name. 2019 legend, Baby Shark, whichever memory that you think of when it comes to Gerardo Parra. He is now your first base coach, and as well as another interesting hire with Ricky Gutierrez. We're going to discuss that later in today's program, but also let's start off with our What If Wednesday. And before we kind of get into today's prompt, this is going to be a new every Wednesday kind of topic. It's going to be a little bit of a think tank. You could say, what if the Nationals do this in the offseason? What if the Nationals did that back in the day? It could be some different scenarios, like what if the Nationals kept Bryce Harper? Things along lines like that during this offseason. I think people really enjoy just kind of these think tank discussions, because there are a lot of what if scenarios when it comes to this Nationals team right now, maybe in the past. What if they kept once? Whatever it may be. This is going to be a nice little kind of talking point and debriefing of his situation maybe. So let's start off with it. And today's prompt is, I think, kind of an interesting one, you could say. Because the Nationals, we all know they have money to spend. Now, will they spend it? We don't really know at this point. But the question is for today, for this What If Wednesday, what if the Nationals do decide to spend on a starting pitcher? Now, here's the thing. We know the Nationals, they do have a lot of young guys in their farm system. Now, again, none of these guys are really kind of your highly touted prospects, unlike Cade Cavalli. Cade Cavalli is kind of that guy. We broke him down a few days ago, or yesterday's show, actually. You can check that out wherever you get your podcasts and see what you think. But then the Nationals, we all kind of know this. They need to spend on something eventually. Now, that could be coming down the line, maybe extending like a C.J. Abrams or something. Maybe that's extending, name that player on the Nationals. Maybe it's a little Lane Thomas extension. I don't know at this moment in time, but I do know this. The Nationals have money to spend. And yes, they are well below the MLB average payroll salary. And you can say what you want about that. You could say that maybe it's just because of the Nationals and the way that they haven't really competed over the last few years, and which is 100% true. They haven't been a competitive ball club since 2019 when they hoisted the World Series trophy. But ever since that, the Nationals just simply have not spent probably the fair share of what they should be getting. So the fair, obvious question for right now, when it comes to me at least, the big overwhelming thing that I really want to see with this Nationals team is what will they do addressing the starting pitching? Because the starting pitching, you saw step-ups from Sonny Gray this year, making his first All-Star appearance, having a good season, had some turbulence at the end, but therefore did kind of come back, came back down to earth, and was really good down the stretch of September, made some adjustments as well. Mackenzie Gore showed a lot of different flashes for his entirety of his first season in the big leagues. Then you also have someone like a Jake Irvin, who has showed promise. Now, he's not going to be someone that you're going to be relying on all too much in the future. But again, he was one of the Nationals' better pitchers down in the second half of the season. So he's certainly going to be in this equation as well. But as far as the Nationals pitching goes, they do kind of need that veteran guy to really kind of hone in on this young staff, because the Nationals, they have a lot of different pieces right now. We talk about Jake Irvin, Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore, Jackson Rutledge. All those guys are still very young. And entering this offseason, there's a lot of different interesting candidates the Nationals should go. Should, could, whatever you want to say. Number one for me right now, as far as free agent pitching goes, it's Aaron Nola. And at this moment in time, he's probably projected to get around a 5-year, $125, $150 million deal, in which could be around the 25 AAV mark, could get up to 28, 27. But even then, who knows what he's going to sign with at this moment? Because Aaron Nola, while he's not that old, obviously, entering his first free agency, this is probably going to be the most interesting guy to watch, because he probably pitched himself out of a little bit more money from this past year. He didn't have his best season ever. In fact, he had one of his worst seasons in quite some time, but he was down really good in that postseason stretch. So he's kind of someone to keep an eye on as well. Also, Sonny Gray, who's going to be a little bit cheaper, but in my opinion, the production and the consistent production that Gray has put up over the last few years, that is something where you can kind of entice Mike Rizzo a little bit, and as well as the Lerner family. Someone who has stayed healthy, someone who has continued to be this ultimate pro, someone who has been in the postseason, who has pitched in big moments, even with the A's and the Twins just this year. He knows what it takes to make it in the postseason. Then you have someone like Blake Snell, former Tampa Bay Rays lefty, really broke out this year, one of the better pitchers in baseball over the course of this season. Right now, Spot Track has him around 24 AAV. And then also Jordan Montgomery, someone that we have seen over the course of this postseason be continually dominant and really just kind of prove himself being that big game pitcher, you could say. So there's a lot of different guys which the Nationals could go for that would qualify to get this big time starting pitcher. Now, the question more so is, will they? Will the Nationals make this next step? Is right now the best time to do this, even when you have a couple guys you may want to see before making that splash signing? Well, here's the inevitable thing with this Nationals team. Patrick Corbin and Trevor Williams will more than likely be gone after this season. 2024, we're talking right here. So at this moment, you have Trevor Williams, Patrick Corbin, Jake Irvin, Mackenzie Gore, and Josiah Gray. You also have Cade Cavalli, who's going to get in the mix. You have Jackson Rutledge, who's going to get in the mix as well. Even with all those guys, all 7 of those guys, I mean, Trevor Williams and Patrick Corbin, those 2 guys right there, those 2 veterans, Trevor Williams and Patrick Corbin, they're not going to be taking up a spot for a young guy like Cade Cavalli. They're in my rotation. They're not going to be taking up a spot for Jackson Rutledge going into next year. Now, if Jackson Rutledge comes up, and let's just say he's not all that great, but even then, let's just say he's fine, that he's someone who shows promise. I would much rather see Jackson Rutledge out there every 5 days than Trevor Williams or Patrick Corbin. Now, again, the Nationals are likely not to take those 2 guys out of the rotation at this moment. It just doesn't really make all too much sense with all the money that they owe them. But the Nationals, they still could do a big kind of flashy move like signing an Aaron Nola, like signing a Sonny Gray. And in fact, amongst all 4 of those guys, someone who I could realistically see is probably someone like Sonny Gray, mid-30s. He's probably going to generate a 4-year, $80 million deal, but the Nationals, they'll probably have to pay a little bit of a loser tax in this scenario, because Sonny Gray is going to want to win a World Series. He's going to want to compete for a postseason, so he may value that over a couple more $1 million. But even then, the Nationals should be knocking on that door 7 days a week, in my opinion. They should be trying to get someone of Sonny Gray's caliber into this building and kind of see what they can do with it. Because if the Nationals were to make kind of this flashy move, not only would it sell the fan base on this, but I think it would kind of show Major League Baseball as a whole, we're not that far off. In 2025, this Nationals team, they're going to hit the ground running. You're going to have guys like Dylan Cruz, James Wood, Brady House, hopefully all establishing themselves in the major leagues. And hopefully also you sprinkle in someone like Dalen Lyle or Trey Lipscomb or whoever else that next prospect could be making their jump into the major leagues, that will kind of sell the fan base on what's to come for this team. Because if you remember back after the 2010 season, not many people were expecting the Nationals to really kind of spend. Well, that offseason, right before 2011, they spent on a huge Jason Worth deal. They did pay the loser tax. They paid him a lot more money than anyone else would have. But even then, it showed that the Nationals were, one, they were going to be competitive, and two, they were serious about getting better. And I think sending a message like that, not only just to the fan base, but to the rest of the baseball world out there, that is going to mean something about this team, because the whole speculation amongst Nationals fans, and really amongst Nationals media as well, how involved is the Lerner family at this moment in time? How involved are they? And do they have one foot out the door? Because that's always kind of been the speculation since they've kind of announced that they were going to explore a sale. Now, they haven't announced that they are not exploring a sale anymore, but it's been a year and a half at this moment. They haven't said anything about it. At this point, you just think that they're going to be moving on with the team. They'll probably explore a sale at another date. But at this point, you just can't be banking on that opportunity. So if the Lerner family, if they really just kind of wanted to plant themselves amongst this DC fan base, they should be going out there trying to get someone of an Aaron Nola caliber, or a Sonny Gray, or a Blake Snell, or a Jordan Montgomery, someone that we're seeing right now in this World Series really just ball out and pitch in the most big game situations and coming out on top. That is what I want to see. And for this What If Wednesday, if they do spend on one of these starting pitchers, we could be talking postseason baseball with this Nationals team. A lot of different things will have to happen, but again, it gets some excitement, some juice back in this fan base, and something that we've kind of needed for just a little bit of time here now. It's an interesting thought, to say the least, but the Lerners and everyone else, they're going to have to get going, get some moves going, and hopefully they can make a little splash this offseason and get some excitement back in this fan base. Thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. And of course, check us out wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Nationals. Make sure to subscribe over on YouTube as well at Locked On Nationals. Now, let's get into some news. As the Nationals, they have announced new hirings for first base coach and as well as the third base coach. Gerardo Parra, your first base coach, and Ricky Gutierrez, you are the third base coach. I think they're interesting hires. We're going to discuss that and really kind of why I think they made these hires. I think Gutierrez is the more interesting one. I'm going to tell you guys why I think that. But before we get into it, let me tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel, and score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And you know this, the Commanders just sold off Montez Sweat and Chase Young. They play the New England Patriots this week up in Boston. Guess what? Fade the Commanders. Now, you may not want to do it, but do it with our friends over at FanDuel, because you get all you want there. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Thank you guys for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day. And the Nationals had some news, little mid-afternoon on a Tuesday, on Halloween as well. Hopefully everyone enjoyed their time. So let's get into it. The Nationals have hired Gerardo Parra as the first base coach for the Nationals for the foreseeable future, and as well as Ricky Gutierrez, who was their run prevention coordinator and someone who is probably going to be an interesting hire here, who will be their third base coach. So first and foremost, let's kind of talk about Eric Young Jr. and as well as Gary DiSarcina, the former first base and third base coach. As far as Gary DiSarcina goes, nothing really stood out to me. Like, at times there was some inconsistency, and you could blame some of the base running blunders on both those guys with Eric Young Jr. and D. Sarcina. I'm sure you could. But at the end of the day, also with the Nationals and the lack of real talent that they have had, especially as far as base running goes, this is not something that is new to this organization. This organization, I feel like, has always struggled when it comes to running the bases. It's not to say they don't have smart people in the building. It's just some teams just aren't that good at it. Some teams just don't really have the need for speed or the build for speed like the Nationals kind of do now, because we've seen guys like Lane Thomas and CJ Abrams kind of take advantage, and they're one of the fastest guys across Major League Baseball, but it hasn't really translated to stolen bases outside of CJ Abrams. Like someone like Lane Thomas, he should be stealing 40 bags a year easily. If he's going to be getting the opportunities, and if he's really going to be getting on base as much as he did this year, that is someone that maybe a first base coach or a third base coach can kind of get in their ear and coach him up a little bit. But let's get into the new hires now, because Gerardo Parra, I mean, do we acknowledge the elephant in the room here? Gerardo Parra, who is the assistant to GM Mike Rizzo over the last few years, what does that role really do? He's assisting him, learning the game, learning different things. Who knows what his real job was and really kind of what he did on a daily basis. But now he's going to be in the clubhouse every single day. And number one, this is something that is good, you could say. This is something that you could really kind of hold on to and say, I like this move. We all know why Gerardo Parra was here in 2019. Kind of give a little different vibe in that Nationals clubhouse. It wasn't really having all much fun in the world. Well, the Nationals, once they got Parra, all of a sudden you see them doing dances in the dugout. You have Baby Shark blasting over the speakers at Nationals Park. All those different things. Gerardo Parra is great. I love Gerardo Parra. Is he kind of living off that a little bit with this organization? Maybe just a tad. But even then, I'm not going to be upset with this decision. Has he ever been a first base coach? Probably not. Well, what do you say about it? Just don't mess up, Gerardo. That's all there is to say. Because I do think having a veteran presence like himself in that clubhouse, someone who has played the game, like Eric Young Jr. as well with the Nationals had, there's going to be some different insight on this. And Gerardo Parra was always kind of hammered as being this big, smart baseball player, someone who has been around winning organizations with the Giants and as well as the Nationals in 2019, someone who's been around Major League Baseball, who has played a lot of different teams and has played a lot of different organizations and has done well and has had a lot of success. So you're not going to see me be upset over this move. In fact, I'm not upset at all about this. I've seen some people be like, man, Gerardo Parra is still living off 2019. And yes, that's funny. I get the joke. It all makes sense. Just don't mess up. Simple as that for me. I do think there is some value there. Now, did Eric Young Jr. kind of get the raw side of this deal, getting booted out as kind of that veteran presence? Sure. But who really knows what his job was doing, what he was doing inside the clubhouse? Not to say he was doing anything bad. I've never heard anything like that. But maybe having someone like Parra, who already is familiar with some guys in the organization, maybe that changes things up a little bit. Maybe it loosens them up in the clubhouse just a little bit. You never really know. I think Davey Martinez and this staff, they'll probably do just fine with that. But another interesting hire was third base coach Ricky Gutierrez, a former major leaguer as well, bounced around the majors, has had a lot of different really kind of associations with the Nationals as well. But over the last few years, he was the run prevention coordinator. And Mark Zuckerman noted when he reported this, or actually when Andrew Golden reported this, that he was kind of the guy credited for CJ Abrams defensively over at shortstop. He was kind of someone that they worked on a lot, not just over at shortstop, but also running the bases. So having Ricky Gutierrez take over this third base job, you've seen a lot of guys in the past who take that third base job gig and kind of run with it. I think this is going to be someone that you could see down the line maybe being a managerial candidate. Now, is this going to be someone that could take over for Davey Martinez down the line? No, I'm not really saying that, because Davey Martinez just got an extension and all of that. But I think Ricky Gutierrez, if the Nationals were to thrive, if this defense really were to kind of take a turn, and if this Nationals base running, if all things were to look up once again for this Nationals team, I kind of think back to those early Nationals teams with Bo Porter sitting over at third base, doing a really good job over there, and then getting the Astros managerial gig. Now, he got, again, a really bad deal going to the Astros team. Didn't win all too much whatsoever in a rebuild mode. That was a tough situation for him. But I think this is going to be the guy that you could say he could be a manager someday. This is someone who is a bright baseball mind. Obviously, when you're over at third base, the role may kind of seem like not that big of a deal. But in hindsight, it really is. Because we have seen the worst of the worst when it comes to third base coaches. We have seen the best when it comes to third base coaches. But it's not just about what they do from waving guys home from third to home or whatever else they're doing out there, giving signs, whatever it may be. It's not just that. Those guys have different jobs. Like if you see Ron Washington and what he's done in Atlanta, this is someone who does like these little hitting drills and little short drop drills to their second baseman and shortstop and third baseman, all those different guys in the infield. They have different roles in the organization. So seeing that Ricky Gutierrez is going to be taken over as a third base coach is, number one, interesting. And number two, what else does he do inside that organization? Because something that I've always kind of seen with Ron Washington and other third base coaches in the past, I've seen them kind of take other roles, whether it be helping defensively, whether it be helping offensively, all these different things. When you have guys who have played Major League Baseball in the past, when you have guys like Parra and Gutierrez who have played Major League Baseball, that is value in itself. Who knows what type of knowledge that they have? And honestly, who really cares? They're going to help this organization one way or the other. It's just going to come in different ways. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see as this kind of moves on forward. But I like to hire for the Nationals. I'm not going to complain about a first base coach or a third base coach. I'll see what they can do. We'll see what kind of roles that they'll have moving forward. It'll be interesting to say the least. But thank you guys for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day. Next, let's kind of talk about the World Series because I'm a little upset. I'll tell you why after this. Thank you guys for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, the Diamondbacks, they have their backs against the walls. Game 5 tonight, down 3-1. And you don't want to see this pitching matchup. It is Nathan Eovaldi against Zach Gallen, both the Game 1 starters. And Nathan Eovaldi, let's just say it right then and there. You hate to see it. You hate to see it for that Arizona Diamondbacks team, because this is kind of like your fun, scrappy Nationals team from 2019. They resemble a lot of us, but also you could say the same about the Texas Rangers. A lot of different talent on the team. Kind of went through some tough stretches of the season, and for them, it was the second half of the season, but for the Nationals, it was the first half of the season. But there's some resemblance from both sides. So here's my thing. I'm immature. I'm stupid. You could say it. It's fine. I don't want to see Max Scherzer win a World Series with the Texas Rangers. And oh, by the way, he's going to be out for the rest of the series now anyways. You may ask, Ryan, why? Why are you so petty like this? Why are you so immature? Why do you think like this? I don't know, man. It's just I don't want to see him happy anywhere else outside of that curly W on his forehead. I want to see Max Scherzer only be a World Series champion with the Washington Nationals. Is it dumb? Absolutely. I understand. But I do not want to see this tonight. But here's the thing also. If you're the Arizona Diamondbacks, you want Zach Gallen on the mound against Nathan Eovaldi. Because again, this is someone who both teams have already seen one time in Game 1 of the World Series. But you give kind of the tip of the cap to someone like Nathan Eovaldi, someone who has won a World Series, has been a big part of World Series teams in the past, someone who has pitched in a ton of postseason action compared to someone like Zach Gallen, who hasn't. And in fact, has not at all, really. So going into this tonight with your season on the line, let's say the Diamondbacks do win, which I do think they have a really good chance of. Well, the Texas Rangers, they haven't lost on the road all season long. All postseason long, rather. you can kind of take that into consideration. Maybe the maybe the Diamondbacks can kind of pounce on them today, get some runs in early, maybe be aggressive again. Because one thing that the Diamondbacks have kind of taken away from over the last few games that I've noticed, they've kind of taken away that scrappy effect that they have, that small ball team that's going to bunt and Perdomo is going to move runners over. But I also think the reason why they've kind of taken that away is because they're not getting guys on base. They're not taking advantage of their raw opportunities to just simply score runs and get guys in scoring positions for their big bats, whether it be Christian Walker or Tommy Pham, who's been lighting the world on fire, or Ketel Marte. All those guys like that who have just been killing the baseball for them haven't really been getting the job done. So Game 5 is tonight. Let's just make it a good game. How about that? It's already November. Wow. Who's going to be the next Mr. November? We'll find out after tonight. Thank you guys for making Locked On Nats your first listen. We'll catch you on the flip side. Have a good one.